More on American archaeology and anthropology. The first Americans lived on land bridge for thousands of years. Genetic study suggests, this is from The Conversation, Scott Armstrong, alias Professor Quaternary Science, Royal Holloway, University of London. The theory that the Americas were populated by humans crossing from Siberia to Alaska across the Bering Strait. The land bridge was first proposed as far as back as 1590 and has been generally accepted since the 1930s. But genetic evidence shows there is no direct ancestral link between the people of ancient East Asia and modern Native Americans. A comparison of DNA from 600 modern Native Americans with ancient DNA recovered from a late Stone Age human skeleton from Malta near Lake Baikal in southern Siberia shows that Native Americans diverged genetically from their Asian ancestors around 25,000 years ago, just as the last ice age was reaching its peak. And if you see the video before this one on the human footprints found in White Sands, New Mexico, being at least 23,000 years old, meaning that humans were to be populating the Americas much earlier than previously thought. Now, this here is placed around 25,000 years ago, just as the last ice age was reaching its peak. Based on archaeological evidence, humans did not survive the last ice age peak in northeast Siberia, and yet there is no evidence that they reached Alaska or the rest of the New World either. While there is evidence to suggest northeast Siberia was inhabited during a warmer period about 30,000 years ago, before the last ice age peaked. After this, the archaeological record goes silent, with only returns 15,000 years ago after the last ice age ended. So where did the ancestors of the Native Americans go for 15,000 years after they split from the rest of their ancient relatives? Kindly support my Patreon account, since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. Surviving in Beringia. As John Hoffaker, Dennis O'Rourke, and I argue in the article for Science, they said, the answer seems to be that they lived on the Bering Land Bridge, the region between Siberia and Alaska that was dry land when sea levels were lower, as much of the world's fresh water was locked up in ice, but which now lies underneath the waters of the Bering and Chukchi Seas. This theory has become increasingly supported by genetic evidence. Now, as we see from the NOAA map, the time lapse here, the Paleoenvironmental Atlas of Beringia, it was a huge landmass when it was dry, huge, connecting Siberia with what is today Alaska. Okay, a huge landmass, and it's probably there that they suppose that these people went to. The Bering Land Bridge, also known as central part of Beringia, is thought to have been up to 600 miles wide, based on evidence from sediment cores drilled into the now submerged landscape. It seems that here and in some adjacent regions of Alaska and Siberia, the landscape at the height of the last glaciation 21,000 years ago was shrub tundra, as found in Arctic Alaska today. It's dominated by dwarf shrubs such as willow and birch, only a few centimeters tall. There's evidence that there may have been some strands of spruce trees in the region too, in some protected microhabitats where temperatures are milder than the regions around. Now, birch trees, we know that there is the sap of the birch tree is made into a juice, a special drink that people in Russia and the area drink, and it's supposed to be very healthy. As you can imagine, that they were also using the plants for subsistence as well. Now, There's evidence that there may have been some strands of spruce trees in the region too, in some protected microhabitats where temperatures were milder than the regions around. The presence of a particular group of beetle species that live in shrub tundra habitats today in Alaska and are associated with a specific range of temperatures also supports the idea the area was a refuge for both animals and plants. Now, this kind of vegetation would not have supported the large grazing animals like the woolly mammoths or the woolly rhinos, Pleistocene horses, camels, and bison. These animals lived on the vegetation of the steppe tundra, which dominated the interior of Alaska and the Yukon, as well as interior regions of northeast Siberia. So this shrub tundra would have supported elk, perhaps some bighorn sheep, and small mammals, but it had the one resource people needed most to keep warm, and that is wood. The wood and the bark of dwarf shrubs would have been used to start fires and burn large mammal bones. The fats inside these bones would also ignite unless they are heated to high temperatures, and for that you need a woody fire. And there is evidence from archaeological sites that people burned bones as fuel. The charred remains of leg bones have been found in many ancient hearths, and it's the heat from these fires that kept these intrepid hunter-gatherers alive through the bitter cold of Arctic winter nights. Their escape to America. The last ice age ended and the land bridge began to disappear beneath the sea some 13,000 years ago. Global sea levels rose as the vast continental ice sheets melted, liberating billions of gallons of fresh water, and as the land bridge flooded, the entire Beringian region grew more warm and moist, and the shrub tundra vegetation spread rapidly, outcompeting the steppe tundra plants that had dominated the interior lowlands of Beringia. While this spelled the end of the woolly mammoths and other large grazing animals, it probably also provided the impetus for human migration. As retreating glaciers opened new routes into the continent, humans traveled first into the Alaskan interior and the Yukon, and ultimately south out of the Arctic region towards the temperate regions of the Americas. The first definitive archaeological evidence we found for the presence of people beyond Beringia and interior Alaska comes from this time about 13,000 years ago. These people are called paleoindians by archaeologists. The genetic evidence records mutations in mitochondrial DNA passed from mother to offspring that are present in today's Native Americans, but not in the Malta remains. This indicates a population isolation from the Siberian mainland for thousands of years, who are the direct ancestors of nearly all of the Native American tribes in both North and South America, the original first peoples, that is. This is fascinating, isn't it? Anything that comes out concerning American anthropology and archaeology we should be grateful for, because there's so little that we know of this so far compared to anthropology and archaeology of other areas. This is by Scott Armstrong Elias, Professor, Quaternary Science, Royal Holloway, University of London, on the conversation. Creative Commons. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support.